Okay, so Natasha and I had a request we were thinking to make an Ascended Master series today, and we wanted to start with Jesus. Would they be permitted to speak with him or have him kind of channel through Natasha today? How should this proceed?
He cannot directly channel through her as his energy is a larger mass.
Mm-hmm.
However, we connected you to the stream with him, and he will be able to connect into the field and give information.
How does that work? Connect to the stream, with him. How does that function?
He connects to the heart, and through that frequency within inside of the heart, it will be able to radiate around into the field where we can translate it through to you.
And you're saying his direct stream would be too powerful?
Yes, because he is a big being. He is not, as we could say, in a human form, as his energy is larger in mass, and this vessel would not be able to hold that light.
But do other people not channel him directly, and how does that work then?
Because they channel different phases of him, they do not channel him in direct as where he is of current. They channel him more, as we could say, in a way to make an understanding a past, as where he was more closer inbound towards human form, and they channel and speak with him then. It is more of an easier way to connect, but today for this purpose, it is to talk to him in the now, as this is what the people require.
And where is he in the now?
He is in the heart.
Mm-hmm.
It is to say to understand what he represents. He is bigger than just this of what you would say the name Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus was the human name, but he is a stream of consciousness along with everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And he opens the gate between the heart where you can connect to the divine and the upper channels of yourself as well, the lowers. It is that he is the stream, he is the bridge, he is that frequency that allows this to happen.
Yes, so it's the connection between the lower and the higher chakras within the heart, then is that kind of 0 point, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions about Jesus' life specifically. Do we need to go back to that, or how do we get those questions answered? Or should we go into visuals or something like that?
It is to say to ask your question and he will give the best answer as to what is needed, as many want to know the past, but the past does not change the present. And some information is helpful in knowledge and understanding and the teachings, but they are not being used correctly. And if they are not understood in the way and the time that you need now, this information is then not, as we could say, complete, and therefore blocks the ascension.
Okay, so I'm just going to go straight into questions then.
Yes, and we will guide as much as what is allowed, and we will give information as to why it is not allowed if something cannot come through.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so it seems people are quite interested in whether, where Jesus traveled to and who his teachers were between his childhood and, the age of 33 in his return to the Bible. Is there any information about that?
He traveled many places and had multiple masters and teachers, but the focus is more on not who the masters were, but more about what they taught, because that is a very important piece. It is to say that many become, as what we would perceive for you, desperate in knowledge of finding out where it came from or what person, and obsess more over the being than the physical information that is given. Is this understood?
Yes, that is 100% understood. I suppose we want to deify the person instead of trying to understand the information they were giving. It's because I know a lot of spiritual teachers are talking about they wish people could worry more about them as a person than they are about their actual content.
Yes, it is that nature into wanting to know who is so enlightened and who could achieve it, but it is more about the journey of how they did this. So we will not be discussing the masters that taught him, but more the teachings he received from them, in order to make it understandable and to block those from drifting away from the information, as this time now on your planet is a very, as we could say, delicate time. If these things are not understood in the correct way, then many are going to miss the part of their ascension that is going to be a bigger change for them, and it is going to be more difficult later on. But Jesus has traveled to many places, but one place that we would bring in quite significance is when he traveled to Egypt. There was a lot of knowledge and information there that he grasped and that he received as well. A lot of those by learning within himself how his vessel works and how he could use this vessel as a tool to guide himself through his daily life. To understand that this vessel is not just, as many would perceive, a body, but much more. Think of it as an advanced vehicle, and it can allow you to perceive things, but also receive things and send them away. There is a lot connected to this vessel that many do not grasp or understand, and therefore they take the vessel for granted, and they wonder why the ascension takes hold or does not advance in the direction that they would want. He went there to go and learn about how it physically works with inside of the vessel, how the heart works with the rest of the body, not just in a sense of saying its anatomy and how it is connected with all of the blood, but how does it create the electromagnetic field that moves through the crystals within inside of the bloodstream. And by doing this, he could harness this energy from the crystals and create healing within himself. And therefore, by understanding how he could use this frequency and mirror it off this crystals with inside of his blood, he could use it to mirror his light into others. And therefore, it could be something of a massive scale when he is healing those that he is around.
What do you mean there's crystals in the bloodstream?
Within the physical blood, there are crystals, tiny, tiny crystals that make up most of the matter within inside of the blood and all of the cells. Think of a cell as a tiny little crystal taking shape and form. There are different organisms within inside of the body, but there's also a crystal structure within the body, and that is why the body can hold information. And remember, it is to do with the water cells, but more of the water crystals within inside of the body.
What is the material of those crystals?
It is more of a liquid base. It is a type of water. It is not a crystal as what you would find on the planet in one that you can name, but it is a type of substance. Think of it this way. Think of it as a fluid, the first fluid. And when this fluid starts to change within light properties, it changes density. And therefore this fluid interacts with your planet. And therefore the different crystals emerge from this. But they all come from the same type of cell. We do not want to use the word water, as this is a very vague way of describing at this time. However, it is the most easiest for all those who are listening, because they do not know how to grasp the different words that we would give on this. So we will just stick with the word saying water cell. But think of it as a pure water frequency without anything attached to it, and not as when one would go and strip the water and create drinking water. It is not the same. Think of it as a type of frequency that is more liquid before it becomes a solid.
What's the material? Is it an element or something?
It is not elemental in structure. It is if it becomes in an element inside of your reality after it becomes out of its waveform. Think of it as a sound frequency. And when it starts to take shape with inside of your planet, it becomes water, physical water. But it is not the water that you think of or that you perceive, because you only have one perception of water. There is multiple facets to water that you are not aware of.
So is that why they say Christ consciousness is actually crystalline consciousness?
Yes, because it is a crystal-like frequency that is running through your veins, that is connected to the physical heart. And because of the way that he connected himself to the heart, that way he could stream through all at the same time by using that frequency and harnessing that light.
How did he harness the energy of the crystals in the blood?
So he went to go and learn. When he was in Egypt, he was taken with inside of chambers, and therefore he noticed the different changes with inside of himself. When he was removed out of these situations or chambers, he went inside of the desert and he had to sit and be in complete silence around himself and away from others to physically feel the heart, because it is not just knowing that it is there or understanding the frequency, but physically feeling it. And once he could feel the heart and he could connect with it in a way where he is, as we could say, neutral in nature, he then felt the heart and felt everything that the heart connected to through these crystals and how these crystals gave life with inside of the body. This took him, as we could say, we wouldn't say too many years, but a few years. In exact, to give you how long he was practicing this was 3 years that took him to be able to master this. And once he could start feeling that frequency with inside of him, he could move it and make it more intense and make it less intense in areas. It is almost that when he could close his eyes, he could see the light in his body change and become brighter and dim, how he could move it around. And that way he could communicate with different pieces of his body. He would ask his body how it is doing. He would ask his lungs, do you need more air? Am I breathing correctly? And his lungs would communicate back to him through these crystals and tell him, you are not breathing deep enough. You are breathing more shallow. And this is causing problems in these parts of us where we are struggling. And so he started to love himself because he started to appreciate himself because he got to know his body. He did this with each organ, each group. He spoke to the different muscular groups in one whole sitting. And he just got to know them as individual but a part of him. He just asked them, what do they need? What is he doing wrong? He found that many parts of his body clashed with each other, where the one part of the body would ask for something, another would not. And then he had to learn how could he please both parts of himself without being more focused on one. And this is where he would sit and start to utilize this frequency. And by learning how to master that, he learned how to master himself.
But why did he have to go to Egypt for this? And what are these chambers you're talking about?
Because where there is in Egypt, there was many different, as we could say, females who were allowed to practice different types of healing, not just physical in nature, but more, we would say, not spiritual, but thus of working with the crystals with inside of the body. This was not a very common practice, as many had to be chosen for it and cannot develop the skill unless it is something that is needed for them in their lifetime. And when they created these chambers, he first went through the different healing chambers, but these were not the ones that created the activation. It was more that there was under this, as what you would perceive, the Sphinx. There was a room, a chamber that could lock in multiple frequencies that was used to harness the energy coming up and from the inside of the planet and resonating there on the inner harmonious frequency of what the planet was vibrating at. And therefore, one could go into this chamber, but this chamber was more only for those who are pure. Because if the vessel could not hold the light, They could not go inside of this chamber.
And which females were helping him here?
There was a female named Merith, but they did not know her as what we could say to be the person who she is now. She was perceived as something false in history, where she was not linked as a physician or any kind of medical, but her son was a part of being priests and therefore held a higher connection to what one would say to God. But because of the way that she could work with these crystals and open up these frequencies, she understood that it wasn't just about what was being done on the outer side of one's spiritual self, but more on the inner side. And therefore, she created this, as we could say, chamber with her son. And this chamber is filled with, as we would say, it is not prominent in nature, but if one would have to go into it, it would look more crystal-like.
Are there actual physical crystals inside of it?
Yes.
Okay, and as we understand it, I think she was like a medicine woman or like a physician or something in those days.
Yes, she was perceived as such through your history. However, there was never any evidence linking her to this, as she was referred to as a healer by God, but it wasn't anywhere inside of, we could say, the knowledge that was left behind from Egypt. She was not added on to any tablets of such because she was not doing physical healing. She was doing it more with inside with these crystals.
Okay. So before we get to how people can do that at home, are there any other countries that he went to? Anything else you can talk about? So I suppose he learned about these crystals in the blood in Egypt. Anything else?
He did travel to various places within the African continent. As we can say, he traveled quite far, but more of these areas are more in ruin now and not areas where people can go and visit. Therefore, we will not state these areas because these are dangerous places at this time. And if people would be wanting to go there because they would want to try to find this connection of Jesus, this will not be good for them. So we will not state exactly where, but we will say that it is more Middle Africa.
Okay. And what did he learn there?
When he went there, he was learning more about the different types of foods and things that he could put inside of his body, and knowing how to alter and change these things, and knowing how to remove certain properties from one and change it into another. Think of it as changing the form of an apple to a pear. It is to change the molecular structure with inside of these things and to add and subtract from them where he could make more or less. And therefore it is something that took time for him to learn. He did not do it all in the first time, but he did visit there a few times in order to go and get the representation. But it is only after he mastered himself that he could master this.
Is it where the kind of saying turning water from water to wine comes from? Okay. And who did he learn from there?
Again, we will not give this master's number. It is many masters and not just one, but we will give you the number of how many it were. It was 5 different ones, but these masters were not as what we would say any in a way that you would perceive. 2 of them were human, but 2 were not. Think of it as he had to master this through talking to the physical nature and structure. Those were his teachers. One of the trees that he connected to and taught him about this is still standing there today, but we will not mention where.
Okay, so how then did he, so you're saying he was connecting with nature, natural nature elements, and then also human humans, masters, in order to understand how to change the structure.
Yes, because these humans were teaching him how to connect with the tree. The tree had the knowledge, and the tree was the one who could tell him how to change the properties as what the tree would do within itself. And therefore he learned by observing. But he first had to learn how to connect to himself in a way that he could talk through his structure of his blood. That is why his blood was so powerful. And that is why still today, those who pray and ask for the blood of Jesus get a mass result in what they need or protection because of this high frequency. But it's because of those crystals and the way that he used it to communicate. He had to harness the way that he thought about himself and not be negative or positive, but more neutral in state. And once he could learn this, instead of using, as one could say, the mind to represent the way that he thought or perceived, he used it from the heart. And he could absorb in energy and move it out. And when he went there, they would teach him how to connect to this tree by placing his arms around it and physically talking to it through the heart and not through the mind, but using his words from his chest and not from his head.
Okay, and then what would happen? So he's talking to the tree with his heart, and then what results would that bring?
So when he spoke to the tree, he first connected to it and connected around that the way that he saw his body with the inside of these crystals, he then saw the entire tree. It is to say that when he closed his eyes, he saw himself glowing in gold and the tree glowing in gold as well. And they were there together. And then as soon as he created this connection, there was an understanding between the two. Think of it as a telepathic way in nature. But he asked the tree and he said, if I would want to give more food, how would I do this? How do you create the food? And the tree showed him and told him how it takes the different structures within inside of the molecules and it adds different light colors to it and therefore can grow what it needs to grow. And he found this very fascinating. And the tree told him he had never tried to do other fruit or things, just doing what he was doing within that time and the way that it was needed. Jesus then asked the tree to show him exactly how to make a fruit. And Jesus sat there for hours watching as all of these different structures within inside of it came together like a little puzzle piece, each one fitting perfectly within inside of it, and watched as it started to grow. And then after this time period of being there, we would give it as 27 hours that he sat holding this tree. This tree started to bear one fruit. And Jesus picked off this fruit. And when he had it in his hand, he could see it because he watched it grow. He physically understood how its light changed within itself by the representation of the frequency through the fluid that it was bouncing off of, or should we say the liquid crystal it was bouncing off of. And as he was holding it within his hand, the tree said to him, now that you have seen it, you understand it. And now that you understand it, you can change it. Change it to what you would want it to be. And he changed it from one fruit to another. And then he noticed that if he could change it, could he possibly change it to something else? And this spiked his curiosity. And he wanted to come back and learn, but he had to leave at that time.
Why did he have to leave?
Because it was time for him to go. The tree is only accessible certain times of, as we could say, during your cycle, but your years and times did not run exactly as they do now. And it was at that time that he could not be around the tree. because of the way that the conditions would be around it.
What were the conditions around it?
It would be more, as we could say, this storm-like, and they did not want him to be there at that time, because at this time is when that area, or we could say that we do not want to use the word jungle, but we will use it as now to describe that time that jungle needed to harness the electrical currents that was coming from that storm. And that is part of the cycle of how this place lived. And Jesus could not be there to disrupt it.
And did Jesus just travel around alone?
No, he did not. He traveled with his mother.
Okay. Is there any specific thing you would like to say about his mother?
She was very compassionate and kind. She helped him a lot during these times, because many do not understand that Jesus was not, as we could say, perfect. He had a lot of emotional battles within himself, still trying to understand what he can do and who he is and the world around him. This was something that broke his heart, of how many could not see and love the way that he did. He was more, as we could say, hurt by this. He was never always perfect and kind. Things would sometimes upset him because he would love so deeply. And she would be there to help teach him how to be compassionate and kind, and just to be more peaceful within himself. She showed him the way that a mother would any of her children, of how to start dealing with all of these things, and by communicating with him correctly.
And how did they have the financial means to move around like this?
It is not to say that they had this of financial means that they would go everywhere, but many would be called to come find them and tell them. Even thus of these masters who lived with inside of this area, they found Jesus. They went to him and to her and said, "We are called upon to come and find you and take you back to where we are and teach you what we know." And therefore they knew that they had to go, and they did this. They did not have this of currency to go. It was more about who was guided where, and synchronicity. They did not go out and find places. They were told that they would be found. Jesus would be found. Those who truly have to interact with him and help guide him during this time will find him wherever he is. And so they just came.
Why did they need to find him specifically?
Because when they find him, he would know that they were sent from Elohim, from God, and that they were sent specifically for the task, that it is not him going out trying to find these things, because then he would go and find falsified information or teachers who would want to perceive themselves as such. But when they found him, and not knowing what he knows, and comes to tell him about things that he was told before that would come to him at the time, he knew that it was real and that it was pure, and that that was the time for it.
Okay. Any other countries did he visit?
He did leave to where we could say this of the European base, and he was in more of these types of areas, but not too long, very briefly. Thus of what one would say Spain he has been to before, but as we say, not a very long period.
What did he learn there?
He did not go to physically learn. He went to observe and see how those were living at that time and how that structure was at that time, in order to know exactly how people think and react. It was important for him to go to different places and see this, because not all were the same from where he was from. different places and different people had different ways and means of living. And he needed to go understand this in order to be able to love everyone.
What did he find or learn in Spain?
He found the people of that time very cruel in nature, and he did not like them. That is why he did not stay too long. But it is not that he didn't like them physically and did not have capacity to love them, but he did not like the way that they treated each other. And he did not like the way that they were more, as we could say, rude to one another at that time. But he knew that this dislike was not because they were bad in nature, but because of the way that they were being taught. It is to understand that they do not know what they do not know. And he had to go and see this. They were never shown better or told about better or told about being more loving and compassionate. But because he did not be able to see this in them at that time, it upset him.
And why was this area specifically, raised to be so kind of rash or rude?
It is not to say that that area in specifically, however, different areas were just the same. But it is that at that time when he went, that was the safest place for him to go and observe without anyone noticing him in particular. It is to say that when he went there, he needed to go and learn and see, because there were stages of this place where there were communities and people and families who loved one another deeply, even though they are living in these harsh conditions. And that, as we could say, more of these, the word that we would use now for you to understand is military in nature. And more of this military effect was in governance of how people would think, react, and do. And there were families who surpassed all of these things, still were loving to each other and looked out for each other and looked out for their neighbors and brought them food and helped them even when it was against rule to help. And these were the small things that he would go to notice, to see that even when conditions change people, there are some who do not change with the conditions, and that there is always a shred of hope. And those people can help affect other people. And that is when he started to learn that by not only loving himself, but learning how to love those around him, to spread that through all the others, that could make change.
Okay, anything else? Any other countries specifically?
When we get later in your questions, we will bring forth more places.
Okay. Anything else about the age before 33?
There's so much that has happened in that time, but it was a very significant number for the 3 and the 3 for him, because it had to be a master number for him to be able to get there, because the universe moves in cycles and it moves in phases. But the way that the spiral works, that it moves and mirrors in every third way to create a change. And every 3 years inside of his life, there was more change where he noticed difference inside of himself. But it was only this of at 9 years old where he would start to learn about the blood and how to move it inside of his body. And then as he would get older, things would change within him and his understanding. Every time that he would move between these facets of age, it is more that his capacity for knowledge would expand. And becoming to this of 33, this was the master time for him, that he had mastered so many teachings and so many different forms from different guides that he could master into one way of teaching those how to connect with themselves.
Okay. And so then after 33, is there anything? So next question was more like, was he part of those scenes? Was he part of that community? Did he grow up there and was part of those ancient mystery schools?
He did not fully grow up there, but he was there for a period of time, as he also learned from the different teachers there, as the Essenes held a lot of information on this, as what one could say more of how to work with frequency and energy and work with the planet and not against it. He was there for a period of time, as this is where he did get most of his schooling, but he was not there for always.
Okay. And is there any information about him being married and having children?
It is to say that many have the belief that he got married and that he had children, but we will not go into that bloodline. However, what we will give is we will say that he was in love and that he did find someone that he was very fond of. But for the information coming through, this is not, as we would say, something we'd want to give to the collective, as many would want to obsess over this, and this is not needed at this time.
So is there anything about who he was with?
We will not give this information.
So is it just about not distracting people?
Yes, because think of it this way. If we would reveal information and let us speak on a hypothetical sense, if we hypothetically said that he did have a wife and he had children, many would obsess now about trying to find that bloodline. And many would obsess over trying to be that bloodline instead of working with what they have within themselves and becoming what they can be. All are streamed from one always, and all have this Jesus frequency within them already, within the crystalline blood, within inside of themselves. But because they are not willing to break away the factions of the pieces within themselves and work on it and become a master of themselves, they would rather want to become, as we could say, a master from the outside and go and find all of these things and obsess over it and convince themselves and others that they are this. And then it also opens more grounds for many to argue about it, as many would say, no, his family would be this and you cannot be that. And therefore, this knowledge is useless for now because it will not change anything. It will just open more information on debate and separation. And that is furthest from what we want at this time.
Okay, what happened in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights?
What specifically would you like to know from there?
Well, I suppose we did hear that he was kind of tempted, it's kind of similar story to Buddha and Mara, in the desert by his ego, which was just his ego at the end of the day. So you did say when he was, learn about this crystalline structure, he did have to go and kind of separate himself and be alone with himself. And so we just want to know what that process looked like, what exactly happened here.
One would say that when a lot of things start to take place with inside of the body, it can cause separation. Let us give an example like hunger. One can have the most sound mind and utmost perfection within their emotions. But once they have been hungry for days, it starts to change. It is almost as if one becomes animalistic in a way. Yes. And snaps away from all rational ways of thinking. And thus is when a perfect time for the ego to step in, as the ego is more of a protector and wants to come in and shell from what is taking place, correct?
Yes, when one is in survival mode.
Yes. So we would say that in similar to this nature, there was an effect like this. It was the vessel that was tired and hungry, and the mind could not reach to where it would think clearly. because of the state that the body was in. There was a wrestle with the way that the ego would come out because, again, Jesus was not perfect. Many need to let go of that idea that any master was perfect. The perfection is when they understand themselves and they can be harmonious with who they are. But there is times within their life where they were battling with themselves, as many are currently battling with themselves and would not see anything other than that. His ego would come and throw him off track, but it was more of to say that he was being watched, and as many would perceive it as the devil coming to tempt him, we would say more of it is just a change in frequency. We tried to keep this information as placid as possible, so if you do not have understanding on it, please ask. But it was more that the thoughts and the frequency around him was tempting him in other ways and trying to remove him from this righteous path that he was on. Think of it as that an outside energy is just observing and it is trying to latch on frequency. And then it starts to give false perceptions within the mind to change the construct around, to try to lower the guard so that the frequency can drop. Is this an understood way?
Yes. Kind of happens like when we sleep as well. We do like a lot of emotional purging, and then there are, I suppose, opportunist energies around to kind of, match that frequency.
Yes. And so as at that time, because just as much as he was loved, just as much as he was hated. And so many energies would have loved to try to connect to him, because if they could influence what he said and did, many would follow. And therefore it was more of, we could say, a torment than anything else. Jesus could hear them all and he could feel them. And it was very difficult for him in the beginning, as he had to wrestle with that idea of not becoming upset and giving in, but more staying neutral. But he did. He eventually did. Because what he did was, instead of reacting to what is going on the outside, he changed his perception and took himself inside of his body, that he was swimming on the inside of his blood, that he was feeling only the inside, the love that his kidneys had for him, the love that his bones had, the happiness that all of his cells had. The higher the frequency, the loving, the light. And by feeling this, as we could say, vessel of his, and by feeling it in nature, and feeling how, yes, it was hungry, but there was so much more than the hunger. There was so much love within there, and how every single cell within inside of it felt happy and recharged, as if surpassing this hunger state, the cells became stronger. And thus is why, as one would say, fasting can cure and help disease, because it shakes off the old frequency and allows it to reboot. And within that time, that is when he decided and knew and understood that the outside does not influence the inside, as the inside is its own network, its own harmony. Think of it as its own world. And when you connect to the inside world, the outside world does not matter, and therefore the outside world can change. And thus is where he made the mental shift.
Okay, so it's about remaining in neutrality then, with the kind of polarization that was going on, but also to internalize instead of externalize.
Yes, but more importantly, what did he do when he internalized? He did not go inside and try to find answers, but he went inside and just felt. By feeling that pure love on the inside and understanding that he is walking with inside of a pure loving body, as everyone's body loves them and gives them this host, as we could say, to allow them to be here on this plane. Every cell loves you dearly, but sometimes the cells do become manic or upset because of the way they're being treated, or they do not receive what they need to receive. But when they are in harmony, they are, as we could say, happiest and most content. And that is the most loving frequency, the most pure. So he did not go within himself to sort his mind or sort his thoughts or go through traumas or work through things within himself. All he did was he went inside and physically felt himself. And he felt that unconditional love of that creation of what he was made to be here, just as everyone else was beautifully created with inside their vessels to be here. He physically felt that loving frequency, and he felt how much his body loved him. And then he realized that that is how much he needs to love others outside. He needed to bring that love that he felt within to the outside world.
But I mean, in today's days, it seems like people can love others, but they struggle very hard to love themselves. So that's also a very kind of apt question, is how was he able to attain that sense of self-love, that...
But it is, as we would say this, to be as direct as possible. And we do not mean to offend those listening, but they do not love those around them. They do not. Because that is not what love is. Your perception of what love is so far away from what love truly is that you think that you love those around you, but it is not. It is more of a change in feeling. Many obsess over those around them and mistaken that for love, that they are more concerned about helping themselves through those others, and they see that as love. But love is not about an action. Love is not about a feeling. Love is about understanding and feeling that unity within, that comprehension of self, of knowing that this is a vessel right here, and the way that this vessel can physically move is something that defies gravity and nature in a way that we understand, but yet it is here. It has multiple layers. It can clean itself. It looks after itself. But the only responsibility is what I put in, and therefore that is what I will get without. But many do not perceive that. Many think of love as an outside force that needs to come to them, and not an inside force that they already are. You are love. You were love. You were always love. You were born of love. You were created of love. You were created of love being this connection, this bond. Think of it as love is this electromagnetic field that pulls all of these crystals together and allows their frequency to move through it and create a physical reality in nature and allows you to have experience. Love is the effect. Love is the cause. Love is not an emotion or way of feeling. That is own perception. Love is comprehension.
Yes. But if Jesus came to teach, love and compassion and the heart, why was he allowed to be tortured and killed?
It is to say that, yes, this is something that many would perceive as not good in nature. However, that was what he was contracted to. That is something that he knew long before it happened. Do not make the mistake. That is why he went to places like Spain and other places to see when people would be at their ugliest, to know what he would deal with. He knew from a child from what is going to happen to him. He did not know at that time exactly how it would take place, but he knew that that is where the end result would be. And that is why he was granted to access all of these teachings, and that those would come and find him, that he would be able to gather this knowledge and understanding, but it would come to an end. because he had to learn and he had to understand. And then the only way he could pass along that learning and understanding is for those to watch him suffer but still be able to forgive. Those to watch him being tortured but still he was able to love. Because if he was in a situation like that and he changed his principles and way of thinking, then did he really love? He had to be this in order to show that it does not matter the circumstance, it is how you react to it.
Okay, so he was at that moment, he could feel he was in neutrality and he was still in unconditional love.
Yes, he could still feel and observe what was going on around him. Make no mistake, being neutral within oneself is very difficult because when you are neutral, it is not that everything around you becomes neutral as well. It is only the inside state that is neutral, but you still feel and experience the chaos around you. And that is what makes it the perfect point of being able to create change, like making water to wine or walking on water or performing other miracles that would seem impossible. Because if through the midst of the chaos, you could still stay neutral, that is where you get granted access to access these frequencies. That is when you are allowed to be the full creator and take charge and change the physical construct around you. Because even though you are in a sea of chaos, you choose to be different. Therefore, you can connect to the frequency that is connected to all life around you, and then you can alter it as a rite of passage.
So why didn't he change the circumstances around him if he was able to turn, an apple into a pear? Would that not have been more of a, lasting miracle?
It wasn't about the miracle. It wasn't about giving people, as we could say, a higher form of him. It needed to be about showing that if he could master this by truly loving himself and understanding what that means, so could you. If he would perform bigger miracles or he would have done bigger things, there would be less people looking towards his teachings and just more people putting him higher on a pedestal. Think of all the ascended masters. Think of their journeys. It is not to say that any of them were bad, but they all get put on a pedestal. Just because they could do it, I cannot. And therefore many lose faith within themselves. So if he had to come and be his fullness in a way of saying, many would lose hope within themselves because they would think that he is too perfect. Many already think that he was too perfect for them to achieve that state. But he wasn't. He was so imperfect, he just understood himself and he did not judge himself or others around him. He understood that situations change people and things can happen. Let us take back to where he was when he was hungry. He had to understand that that is how his body was feeling. He could not change it. He could not snap his fingers and be perfect and say, I am not hungry, I do not feel emotional, and I do not feel triggered at this time, because the circumstance has forced him. However, he could look at it from a perspective and say, I am hungry, I am emotional, I am feeling all of this because of my current situation, but I do not need to be that because I can choose to be what I want in this moment, and I choose to be the love that I feel within myself because it is a lot better than feeling the hate from outside of myself.
Yes.
And it is that perceptual shift that made him what he is. And that is what he came to teach, is that when you can be so harmonious with inside of the self, when you can master the language of yourself and comprehend on the inside who you are. Doesn't matter what you have done or what you're going to do or the way you react in a situation. But if you can understand the perception in the moment and alter it, that is the true mastery. And that is what he came to teach.
Okay. And why was the information about dying for our sins on, being crucified, where did that come from? Why was that propagated?
Because it was understood to say that he took away the burden of feeling that you need to be perfect, that you need to achieve this godlike state in order to be able to activate your consciousness or yourself. He took away that. He did this when he was on the cross. He told them that he forgives them, and that he asked that everybody forgives them for what they have done. And many did not understand that when he was saying this, he was trying to describe that it is human emotion and human feeling. But because they were never taught to think differently or to understand things differently from their heart, they would never see it. No one comes in this world to hate. Many perceive that they do, but no one does. People are taught to hate. People are taught to be mean. It is when a child feels so unloved that they become upset, angry, bite, scream. Is this not the truth? It is the absence of love that creates the hate, is it not? So, if we would want to remove all of the hate, we would have to create the presence of love and not falsified love. And that is what he was trying to say. Your sins do not make you who you are. Your past does not make you who you are. It is experience that you had, and you did not know better at that time. But now you know better. Watch how you move forward. If you were mean and would throw things at people and hurt them, forgive yourself for when you did that. But now understanding that it hurt them and that it is not a loving thing to do, don't do it. Don't validate the experience and say, well, I had to throw them with a rock because they did not love me. Because that is the absence of it. And that is what he was trying to teach, that even things in your past, even your past lives and past traumas, yes, they sit within your body, but they do not have to sit there forever. Any time that you consciously decide, hey, I'm going to let go of that experience because I do not need it, you can. And that is the way that Jesus came to teach and say that your sins do not define you. That even if you were a horrible person, now at this time of understanding what love is, you can choose to be loving, and you can choose to be loving towards yourself and allow that frequency to radiate to those around you and become contagious. And therefore, the sins of your past will disappear because that's all they are, things of the past. But because the love is not understood, the past holds on with inside of the vessel.
Okay, can you please explain the true meaning? Sorry, there's something about Jesus is the Son of God, right? So who is Jesus' Father, or the Father that Jesus kept referring to in the Bible?
It is the one that all see as the Father. There is only one God, one Elohim, one Ra. It is all the same. We all stem from exactly the same loving being, that loving light and frequency. And that is what all come from. Does not matter your religion that you have of today. You all come from exactly the same place. But think of it as this. We will give it to you in a way that is simple in understanding. Think of God as the planet and the people as the nature growing on the planet. In different countries, there's different types of plants, but they all come from the same earth. They all still need the same structures. They all still need the sunlight. They all still need the rain. They all still need the life on the planet to create the conditions. Is this not true?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what it is. That is the Father. He has seen it as the Father because that is the Creator, the universal Creator that has not only created the planet but the entire universe, the entire construct. It is just one loving frequency that's experiencing itself in multiple ways. And when it experiences itself away from what it already is. So yes, many could say that the planet is dark and that there is horrible things happening, but there were always these things happening because they had to fall away from the experience in order to experience. And thus is what it is about. Thus is why, even when one could say that Jesus did not hate the devil, or that as what was perceived as the devil, Jesus did not hate any of them because they were just a character. They were just something that was placed here in order to create change. One cannot grow if there is not an area that you need to grow towards. Let us put it in this perception. You cannot heal if you did not get sick, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So healing is not a punishment. It doesn't mean that there is something wrong. Healing is just another perception to show you where you can get stronger and where you can elevate and where you can change.
Mm-hmm.
It is never a bad thing, but many have created it as such because they could not understand love and because they were hurt by many others that they have felt this.
Okay, so you're saying love is just an understanding. It's not kind of a euphoric or perpetually positive state as we understand it.
No, it is an understanding, more of, as we could say, comprehension is the correct word.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you can comprehend what it is and how it works, then you can comprehend that it is already in everything. And everything started from that and then grew its experience. Think of it as this way, as a better reference to make sense. Think of it as the human vessel. Everything comes from the nervous system. The brain develops and then the eyes. And from the eyes, thousands and thousands of little strings get released, and on those strings are the nerves, and those nerves start to grow the tissue, the organs, the fingers, the nose, the ears, and everything comes from it. But everything is connected to it, as that is why everything can create and feel sensation. Everything is connected all the time, but just because your ear and your foot have the same tissue construct and the same molecules in the nervous system does not mean that they are physically the same at current. They are different extensions of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is. Many are looking for love, but many are not understanding they are already it. They just need to go back and feel it and remember it. But many are searching for it because they are searching for a false perception of it. And that is when they never achieve it.
And did Jesus really heal people, or was he just helping them understand that they can heal themselves or that they are already healed?
Jesus would touch them and they would feel that love within Jesus. And when they felt that love, it is that they felt it within inside of themselves. And therefore, he passed along that feeling, that vibration. And that vibration allowed them to heal themselves. So yes, one could say he did heal them because he brought the frequency. But they took it. And then healed themselves. And that is why even now, when many sit, they can heal themselves. But it's their belief structure around their healing that blocks them from doing it.
Okay, so he basically showed them the frequency of healing, and then it was their choice to embody it or not.
Yes.
Okay. And what is the true meaning behind the Eucharist, the Holy Communion, and the Last Supper?
It is to say that there are many clashing theories and as we would say, conversations on this, because there are many religious factions who would fight with one another about it. And again, we will not go into detailed information that will cause conflict, because this is not the way. But it was more into understand that when you embody the body of Christ, and let us say this of the blood of Jesus, it is not to say that you have to go and drink Jesus' blood, but it is to understand that his blood is your blood and your blood is his blood. As long as you have a heart, you are connected to the blood, to the Christ frequency, because he was born of human, and all humans have this. We are different in many ways, one would think, but all exactly the same on the inside. And that is what matters. And by taking the blood, it is an embodiment of saying that I accept the frequency. Because once when one activates the crystalline frequency within inside of the blood and can connect to his frequency, you can comprehend the love and see it from the perspective that he saw it from. And that is why he brought this forth, in order for those who get lost, because he knew that it will take a lot of years and there will be conflict around it. Make no mistake. He knew where it was going, because he was told, and he was even shown premonitions of the future, of what would happen to people and how people would create religions and fight about it. He knew all of this already. And it was his way of saying that when you call upon this frequency, it is already yours and you can embody it within inside of yourself. But it is not a way that he could explain it back then, an easier way that you could explain it now. He did it in the best way to help their minds comprehend how they could call upon this frequency.
Because some people were saying that, I suppose the wine from the Holy Communion was originally, given in the Last Supper. They were ingesting psychedelics which would blast open the third eye. Is there any reference or connection to that?
None that we can state. There was nothing of this sort that was given in order to open their minds in that way. But it was more of Jesus projecting that frequency around them. And one can say that even one that is in that state of now, of sitting without any substance, when you can connect to that frequency within your bloodstream and harness it and truly activate that light, you can create it for all sorts of purposes and communication that one would seem as a psychedelic experience. But we can confirm on this that that was not placed within at that time.
Okay.
Not in that. But it was more that he did bless it in a way that when everyone ingested it, that everybody could be on his frequency and feel what he was feeling and understand in order to move forward from that.
So it's a kind of like sacred ceremony that reminds us that we can activate and harness the energy from the crystals in the blood.
Yes. And that by doing so, you can then access what he accessed. He was not trying to be better or higher than anyone else. He was trying to show that if I can do it, so can you. Anyone can do it. You did not have to be noble or born as a king to be able to do this. But you just needed to understand and comprehend the structures within yourself and what is taking place around you in order to merge them together. And that is what he brought forth in with his teachings. And that is why he did that, was to show everybody that even they who were sitting with him at that time could access that in that way, that it was not just him. He was not special. He was just conscious about love and what it truly was. And he was just trying to teach everyone that they already have that consciousness within them, even if they are using it or not.
Well, I suppose he was training for his whole life to be able to be who he was. It's kind of almost unfair to tell people just to do that, overnight, if they haven't had that training since childhood.
But it is to say that he already went through the training for you. When you activate it with inside of the blood, when you truly love yourself and love everything with inside of this body, and you activate that blood, you get all of the teachings, all of the knowledge, you get everything that he sacrificed his life for to bring forth to you, you already get within you. So why would you want to go and torture yourself in that way when you can harness it? It is already there. When he was on the cross, he locked the heart frequency. He allowed it to be part of his last stream with inside of the blood system, because all blood is at the same frequency. That is why every vessel can live. That is why they're all connected and can feel from each other frequencies moving, because of this crystal liquid with inside of your body that you call blood. And with this blood, he then locked it within his heart, and he locked his frequency with inside of the memory of the DNA of these crystals. And every single person has the same crystals with inside of them. There is no special factions and people who have and people who do not. Some have different structures with inside of their blood systems, yes, that do make them different. But this original liquid crystal is what runs the heart. It what creates the heart, because that is the only thing that ties you into physical and spiritual at the same time, that creates this electromagnetic field and push and force and creation. And when he locked the hearts, he locked it that you could only achieve this knowledge and only understand how to utilize this when you have mastered yourself. Because if you could love yourself through all of your mistakes that you will always be doing, and all of the things that you have already done, and understand yourself in such a way that you do not place judgment, then your heart will open to where you need to go. Because think of it this way. Let us take this vessel as an example. This vessel is not perfect. This vessel will never be close to perfect. She has been told many times of things she should and should not do, but still her free will takes her into different directions. She will do what she wants when she wants. And is that a bad thing? No. But is it a good thing? Also no. The thing is, it is just about situation. And we will give it as an example. Let us take that many know who watch these videos, that something that has been told to this vessel all the time is to not eat sugar. Because it lowers the vibrational structure with inside of the molecules of the cells, which then allow the vessel's frequency to drop and be open to things that it should not be open to. And therefore, is it something that is going to kill the vessel? No. But it means that where the vessel, if she loved the vessel enough in that moment to understand to not eat sugar before channeling a high frequency, she would not get sick the next day. She would not be in agonizing pain, have headaches, feel nausea, feel vomiting. How many times has that happened to this vessel?
Every time.
Many times.
Yes.
Because the vessel knows that it needs to channel hold the light. But the operator of Natasha, thought, it would be okay, and it would be fine. And every time she would get sick. And now she does not do this anymore. And she doesn't get this sick anymore. And that is the difference. And that is what he was trying to teach, is that yes, things are going to happen to you. But if she had to now judge herself on every time that she has eaten the sugar and hurt herself, she would now forever live in guilt and in this despair and never truly love herself. But if she could now look at herself in a moment and someone could say, here is a brownie before your session. Would you like to have it? And she would go, I think I would not, because it's not going to make me feel good, even though she is craving it. That is the self-love of going, I understand, she comprehends how it will affect her vessel. And therefore, when she does the session and she comes out of this, she does not feel sick, nausea, vomiting, headaches, Why? Because she actually loved herself in the moment to know that it was not good for her.
Also an understanding, right? So it's basically just consciousness instead of unconsciousness.
Yes, but that is all you are, is consciousness, and that's all that it is. It is consciously understanding these things, the same as relationships and boundaries. It is the same to say that if you know that someone is always going to overstep your boundary, why keep inviting them over for dinner to disrespect you within your own house? When you know that they have not changed that part of themselves, you have now done an unloving thing towards yourself, and you get upset at yourself. And then you place judgment, but this is all happening within your mind, and you do not understand the feelings and emotions you're having, but it is because you're trying to not fight with yourself in the background.
Okay.
And love is going, I want to spend time with that person, but I would rather go on a walk for them, because if they come in my house and disrespect me here, it is going to make me sad. And these are the types of things.
Yes. Okay, and the second coming, is that a physical kind of incarnation, or is it just the Christ consciousness within all of us?
It is the Christ consciousness. We will say it in two aspects, where many perceive it as Jesus coming down inside a physical form. We would say that this is a falsified perception, and it has been stated in the Bible that that of one who comes pretending to be Christ is a false Christ, because that is not it. But Jesus will come down again as a frequency that everyone will feel, and they will know that this is Jesus. It won't be doubtful. It will be this electromagnetic current running in your vessel, this ultimate love and frequency. You would just feel it and know that this is what it is. And that is what will take place when he comes. But one can activate it already within the self. But there is a time now with your ascension that there will be where Jesus' frequency will physically come back into the planet again, in and around. But we will not state more than this.
Okay.
Because many will fight over it because of their beliefs. Instead of trying to absorb the information, if it does not fit in their structure, they would want to fight about it, which is a normal state. But we would ask that if there are any of those who do not understand this construct yet, to first sit with yourself and work it through before trying to lash at others, as your journey in spirituality is the same as you right now. Think of your thumbprint. Think of your vessel. No one is you. Not even twins have exactly the same structures and prints and frequency. Each is so unique. There are many who will fall to different masters and different teachings and different beliefs that is better for your absorption, but it is all the same message at the end of the day, is it not? And therefore, your spirituality is always going to be so unique towards your construct as a being. So try to internalize that before trying to pull others into your belief. Understand that it is your own. Take what you can and use it so that you can grasp the inside and be a master of yourself.
And is Jesus physically embodied anywhere now?
Currently not.
Okay, so he's just kind of a master helping people from the other side.
Yes, because the energy is too big. And he does not come in, as we could say, in large quantities, very small, as now he is just hovering through the frequencies of the heart. And that is why when we say for many of those to connect to the heart, because as soon as you learn how to use this tool, it is to think of it as you are driving in a car, but you do not know how to use the gearbox. You are not really going to go far. But the gearbox, when you put it into the right gear, you can go to where you want to go. You can either go forwards or backwards or faster and slower. When you master the heart, you master the gearbox of your vessel. And therefore, Jesus can communicate through to you and show you many teachings, as well as other ascended masters as well. Because it is not just him who came to teach that, but his job was to show how to embody it, where others came to teach other factions of it, because it is such a vast network of understanding and vast network of comprehension.
And what did Jesus look like when he walked the earth?
In what way? His
As
shape?
in physically, yes.
Yes, well, he was a man.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, his hair was very long. And thus of he did have a beard, but not the way that many depict him. We would not give a lot of details on his facial structures because, again, many have beliefs of what they know and what they have documented, and they do believe that if it is not right towards them, that they would create conflict, and this session is not about that. But we will say that his skin was not of fair. He was not, as we could say, white in nature. He was a darker in nature, more of, as we could say, tanned.
Okay. Anything about his hair?
His hair was darker, but more of, we would say, not black. It was more this of a brown with a lighter shade between, but not anything darker.
Because I know, in Dolores Cannon's book, she says that he had red hair.
Yes, this lighter, but it is not red, as we would give it more as a gold-like nature.
Okay. Does that have something to do with the kind of golden, energy?
Yes, it is more with the frequency, but that's why we say these lighter structures. We would give it as gold, but many could perceive it as an copper type of pigment, but not in that such.
Okay.
But what we will say about him is a very interesting thing of why his hair was very long. Because at the back of the body, between where the shoulder blades connect, there is a part on the spine that is an influential structure. And the hair is extension of the nervous system, which is a protection. And having it hang over there can protect from entities trying to attach to the vessel. And this is why he would always wear his hair loose.
Is it the top of the spine, or where is that?
It is at this structure here.
Okay.
This is not as important as the base here, because when a frequency connects to the base just where the neck meets the shoulders in that part of the spine, then they tend to be able to control the nervous system. And some people could, as we say, we do not want to use the word possession, as this is not as an accurate word. We will say controlled and influenced.
Or influenced, I think, is the right word. But what can people do then not to have that influence? Because I suppose everyone can't have long hair that hangs over the back.
Again, it is just about how you create things for yourself. Then it was that the hair held higher frequency and was better. That is why in many cultures they keep the long hair. That's of like the Indians in nature, as we could say, Native Americans had the longer hair as well. This is something because of that frequency. But in now's time, because there is more consciousness to it, one can create protection by saying, the hair on my body creates the frequency that protects me. By being aware of it, one can even visualize that even though the hair is short, the energy still runs parallel over the body. Again, it is just about perception.
Yes, but could an entity even attach if it's only attaching because it's like attracts like, right? So there must be density in the body that should be addressed first, the root, not the symptom, which would be the attachment.
Yes, but it is many of those, as we could say, depending on where the vessel is, that gets attached in that way. But that is an attachment point for, as we would give bigger energies that cannot be embodied in the body, like what one would perceive disease and different things like that, is all different frequencies, correct, that come and change the construct, which are at a different density than the original state. Now there are bigger entities that want to influence and interact, and they use this type, it looks like a cord that connects to the area. But again, it is what one is putting into the body is what one can radiate without. They are there, but it doesn't mean that they are always interacting with everyone. It is just, again, as you say, like frequency. So therefore, what you put into yourself and how you treat and perceive yourself is what will mirror outward and will be able to be the shield between that.
Because it's as within, so without.
Yes.
Okay. And is there a song that Jesus liked to sing in his native tongue that you could sing for us and then translate?
For what purpose would you like this?
Well, something that he loved, that would move people, because I'm really very much into music, and I know that actually has a higher frequency than just kind of speaking.
We will not be able to give a song, but we will be able to give a frequency, if that will be accepted.
Yes, thank you.
We must just open. This vessel's vocal cords is not as good as what we hoped, but this is a type of frequency that he would have liked to use instruments with, because he liked instruments more, and this harp in nature. And he would love these type of octaves to go higher, higher, lower, lower, higher. And this helped him just to center himself, because it made him feel that everything is not moving fast, but at the perfect pace. And it was just a form of relaxation. But he would not sing it. He would play it. But we apologize if the vessel could not do it justice.
Okay. But what are the significances of those frequencies that she was singing?
When he used to sit and play this frequency, it would be a reminder for him to come back within himself. When he felt overwhelmed. As we say, many do believe that Jesus had this perfection, but just as Jesus loved, he had so much sadness. He had a very difficult life because he loved so much. Think of it as the way that you love and understand now, and think about being put back into a time period where this was never even concepts, that the feelings and understanding that you have now was never even words. Think of Jesus as having a mind of today in a time like that. Could you imagine the loneliness? Could you imagine the hardship? That this was a very emotional time for him. And he had a very good support structure. And as we say, his mother was really good at helping him with this. Why he would play this all the time, even when he was without her, was because she used to hum this to him when he was little, in order just to get him to sleep. But she did it way better, as what we can say. And she would use more of a higher octave in order to bounce a higher frequency in the room, just to allow him to calm down when he was crying. And this was a soothing thing for him, because it allowed him to calm his state of being. And now, when we give this over, it was because when he was in times that he felt that he was overwhelmed or emotional and couldn't show it, he would sit and play the song to himself, and he would visualize his mother singing.
And is there anything significant of the actual frequency itself, the hertz?
Yes. It is a very, as we could say, the vessel did not do it in the correct hertz, because the vessel cannot achieve that hertz. But the frequency, each one, when it harmonizes, it goes from the heart to the head to the root to the heart. And it changes in frequency to just bring 3 aspects back together and allow them to look withinward, to say that I'm grounded in who I am, I can see and understand it, but I bring myself back to me. And that is where he kept himself from becoming overwhelmed.
Okay.
So many of those can use different frequencies of these areas in order to help.
Okay. Okay, and why do children get so abused and misused on this planet? Is all the suffering necessary to the point where people believe there is no God because of it?
Let us rephrase that with you in a way that we can truly digest this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because one believes that God makes this or that people do this?
Well, they believe that God allows it. Why doesn't God do so? For instance, specifically children that suffer, people think that there's some complete injustice, because they are so pure and innocent. And why do they need to suffer? And if there's a God, would God not prevent it?
Yes, but think a little deeper than this, because this is an emotional way of thinking.
Yes.
And we would say it is a valid way of thinking, but emotional at its best. If God would interfere with that, would that not mean that God would have to interfere with other things?
Mm-hmm.
And if you did not like someone, that God would have to interfere? It is the same concept in different ways. The thing is, God gave understanding, knowledge, frequency, as well as comprehension. It is for the person to change and allow the experience. It is also free will. Now, many would argue and say it is not free will of the child, which is in a way correct. However, it is free will of the people, is it not? If people would choose a king, and a king would then send his soldiers out and collect all the children and steal them from their parents, whose free will was it? Those who elected the king, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
It is the system that has been fed by the belief and allowed by free will. So these things take place, and many have contracts where they learn these experiences. However, this is not always the case. It is because people are more inclined to see the bad in things but not create the change. And it is a scary thing to create the change because many believe that they cannot do it. And that is where self-doubt comes in. But let us take the world as it is now. There are children who get kidnapped and sent to places because there are people who are sicker in nature who enjoy those types of things. But it's because those people have not been infected by love. They have only seen the opposite of love. So therefore they will only give out the opposite of love. Does this so far make understanding?
Mm-hmm.
So then what takes place is many of us and those and people who would love to give love and not see this happen do not only allow their frequencies to shine. That is the best we can give, because what takes place is you can see this and say, this is horrible what is happening there. But because you're not making the conscious effort to connect to your frequency and your crystals within inside of your vessel to truly shine your light, that you can then shine upon another, and therefore eventually shine around the whole world. And then the problem would remove itself. But many have this thing of someone else has to come out and do it. And because they allow these mental spaces, or because they're looking for something outside of themselves, they allow these things to exist. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, with these types of structures and things that are taking place, yes, many would say that there are those who are contracted and those who want that experience, but it is also an opportunity for the world to change itself. These things have always been taking place. They have never stopped. It is now the job of the conscious to make it stop by being conscious about it, by being conscious together, by changing what is taking place. One cannot change something, but millions can. Think of these things as now people. How quickly, if one gets on this technology and they write something about someone, they can alter someone's life or remove them from power. It is that easy, but none are putting it into the right direction. Many are still stuck by the old structures, and yes, it is not to say that they are all in negative, but let us take this. If communities start creating businesses that focus on the good things and helping others and not doing bad things, they then become majority. And when they become majority, they start to remove business from those who do these bad things. And their frequency becomes contagious and spreads around the world.
But I suppose we people don't want to accept that we live in a world where these kinds of things happen. They don't want to accept it, even though they are happening.
The thing is, it has always been happening. And it has actually always been worse. It is now, as we could say, better than what it was. Even in the time when, as we could say, Jesus was here, one of the things that made him the most sad is that many people did not have rights as the way that they do now. Many were enslaved. Doesn't matter what their thoughts, their beliefs, their heart said. Many did not have a choice. And that is why he came to teach, because all do have a choice. But the choice is when the collective stands together. Yes, these things are happening. But what are you going to do about it? You cannot go there and change it and go and remove these children from those things. But you can alter your consciousness and make others conscious and create such a high loving frequency on the planet that it makes it almost impossible for those frequencies to grow. The same as with a disease in the body. If there's a stagnant frequency and you up the frequency and you up the body and you heal it, you remove that frequency because it can no longer live in the host. And that is the same with the planet. It is lift the consciousness, and not by, many have a false perception of trying to lift the consciousness by telling others how to be conscious, by forcing them into their beliefs and into their structures. But this is not the case. Each one has their own way of perception. The only unity between all perception is love, and that is that. As long as the unity is done through love, it does not matter what they believe. Stop fighting over who believes in Jesus in what way, or who believes in what master in what way, or what way they should believe, or else they are wrong. Understand that these teachings and these things that were given were direction of how to be one with yourself and how to be loving, and carry that over to another. Even if someone is far from the reality of what love is, still handle them with loving eyes, because they cannot become love if they don't see love.
Okay, so let's maybe get into how people can then embody this kind of Christ consciousness, right? So we were talking about the harnessing the crystals in the blood, changing structures from one to another, learning to love oneself amongst, chaos, and learning about neutralization and remaining on the inside and not the outside. Can we talk more about that? How people at home can do that? Not how Jesus himself did it, because I suppose he was a master and we are not.
Yes, but that's the thing. You are a master.
But how can we then kind of attain that masterhood, though? I think in a practical sense is what I'm asking.
The way to attain it is to physically sit with yourself and go to find it.
Okay.
It is not something that is going to come and fall on your lap and you are going to be happy about it.
Okay.
Yes, it is not something that is just going to come. It is like when we say an athlete has to run in order to get fitter so they can run further and further and further. It is not a joyous thing to be running. Your body feels like it is on fire. You want to quit every 5 minutes. And that is what it is about.
Okay.
Many are blocked from this not because they cannot do it or do not possess the capability. is because they are not willing to look within themselves and actually see what is being taken place on the inside. And so the most practical way of doing it is to just truly understand yourself. Go and sit in silence. Do not distract yourself with music. Do not distract yourself with things going on outside or what other people are saying or what other masters have taught. It is to go within yourself, sit in that complete silence and just ask yourself, why do I feel the way I do? Have a conversation with yourself. When have you last had a conversation with yourself? It is a very long time because many are used to others talking and thinking for them. But when you sit and you say, why do I feel this way? Where are these things? Okay, I get affected like this, this, and this. Now, what am I going to do about that? Well, I can try. The more you create this conversation, the more you open up stream for your highest energy to come out from the heart, out the mouth, and to guide you. Talk to yourself out loud in a confined space where you feel safe and that none is listening to you. And do not place judgment of what you say. You might realize that your ascension is being blocked because you do not like the color green. And every time you are around it, you feel threatened. Then go sit in a red room where you feel good. Each one is so different and each one's way of connecting to their native self is different. The only way that is the same is that you will have to spend time with yourself. Alone time. Sit. If many find it hard to just sit, look at yourself in the mirror. Physically look at yourself. Look at your hands and say, wow, are these really my hands? Where did I get that scar? Why is my hand swollen more than the other one? Oh, I've maybe been picking up something that I shouldn't have. And when you can start to do this, write it down and analyze yourself in that way. And try to look at yourself from the outside perception by understanding from the inside perception. And how we mean this is when you look at yourself, many find it hard because they feel ashamed of themselves. But then look at yourself and write there, why do I feel ashamed? And when you look, you say, I feel like my cheeks look fat. You say, okay, cheeks look fat. And you write that down. And then after that, you say, what else do I see? I see my thighs, my breasts, everything is enlarged. Okay, but why do you feel that they are enlarged? Well, because I'm not exercising, I'm not drinking water, and also I have not been very kind with my diet. Be honest with yourself because this exercise is not about lying. No one else is going to see it. And the true unity within yourself is that honesty. Because when honesty starts to flow, the frequency can start to move. But if you're not willing to be honest with yourself and sit with yourself, you are never going to achieve that master-like state within you and activate what you need. Does this make sense?
Yes, well, I suppose that it reinforces that idea of understanding, right? Is that the love equals understanding. So going through a process like this, you can understand yourself better.
Yes, but then you also know how to handle yourself. Because remember, in a way, yes, you are one being, but you are not. You are multiple facets of yourself if you have not healed them, as well as you are two different structures. You are the soul and you are the vessel. The vessel also has its own feelings and things that it thinks about. Let us use an example. Let us say that this vessel does not want to have coffee because every time it has coffee, it dehydrates itself and then it has to work hard in doing that. And now it tries to put you off of coffee. But the soul likes coffee. So what are they going to do? You cannot please one or the other, but you can come in unity and say, okay, what we will do is I will have coffee every third day and I will drink water in between. And the vessel will say, all right, that is acceptable to me. And it's by understanding that there is multiple sides that need to be bridged. It's not just one. And that is what it is connecting to the heart, is understanding that the lungs need something different than the kidneys. The kidneys need something different than the liver. The liver needs something different from the bladder. There is so many different components within inside. but you cannot do one more than the other. It is to try and create a rhythm of moderation of things that can benefit you in all ways without harming yourself.
Yes. And then how can we activate the crystals in our blood?
So once you have created this unity within yourself, then you can sit and physically feel. Many do not get a physical feeling sensation. Many will see it, but the best way to say is feel it. Just the same as what you sit and you can feel inside of your body that my hand is a bit stiff, or my one hand is a bit warmer than the other, or my feet are cold. These are sensational changes. And when one can sit within yourself and you start feeling the sensational changes, bring that perception into the chest. And when you have that perception into the chest, think only of the heart and the blood. And when you are thinking of the heart and the blood, you can visualize that the more you activate this light of understanding, the more you feel the love for yourself by feeling everything within inside of yourself, the same way as thinking of how much your body loves you. That is always a very good visualization to do, that every cell loves you. And when you can start to perceive that type of love, put it inside of your chest and see it grow like a light. And once it grows like a light, it will start to reflect off, and then one will start to feel the changes within inside of the vessel. It sounds at a very far reachable method, but it is yet the most easy visualization.
But people sometimes say they can't visualize.
They cannot physically visualize, but they can mentally visualize. It is to say the same as with your day. You cannot see the end of your day. You do not know what is going to happen, but you can say, I'm going to have a good day today. And doesn't matter what comes my way, it's going to be all right. And you walk outside and it starts raining and you start to appreciate the rain because you say, well, it is a good day today. And it is that type of perception, about bringing forth a perception and putting it there. There is no correct way of doing it, and there is no incorrect way. It is just about the way that makes you understand what is taking place inside of the construct. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it is for people to find a way that makes them comfortable within themselves, where they can physically feel love within their body. Whether it be, even if they do not think of their body, they think about, I do like my cat, and my cat makes me feel warm and happy every time I see its cute face. Then think of it being inside of your chest, and think of your cat as a part of your body, and how you love your cat because you love yourself. And when you bring forth a perception that creates that frequency, you will start to activate the crystals within the blood.
Okay. And then how can we change water into wine, for instance?
So once you have already activated the crystals within inside of the body, you can then alter the frequency. Then when you connect with the water, you can activate with the crystals within, because as we say, think of it as energy is a liquid crystal. That is the easiest way to perceive it. So once you have connected to the crystals within your body, you can then use that to connect to the crystals within inside of that atom-based construct, and then you can ask it, I would like you to become wine. And then it will start to change. But it has to be on a like frequency. That's why you need to activate your heart first in order to be able to activate that.
Okay. And how can we learn to love ourselves in the midst of chaos and a lot of suffering and cruelty?
Again, love is a way of understanding. It is not a feeling.
Okay.
So it is to comprehend the moment and say, I do feel sad, I do feel upset, and that is okay. But I'm not going to take it out on someone else. I'm going to sit with this. And go and sit with yourself and cry if you need to cry. And have the moment and experience it. Shout into a pillow. But when you are done, do not judge yourself for feeling that and go, wow, I'm glad I let go of that and I released it. And then move forward. But it's because many use an action when they are upset. They will throw something, they will break it, then the whole day they would think about it because they feel guilty about what they've done. But instead of that, the best way is to try and isolate yourself. And if you cannot physically isolate yourself, mentally isolate yourself. Tune out of the outside world and find something inside of yourself, whether it be listening to your breathing, feeling your physical heartbeat within inside of your body, feeling your pulse, and then thinking to yourself, okay, well, I am still alive, so that's good. And start to just change your perception in the moment. Each one will find a different technique, but start with something very small because then you can alter it into bigger ways into your life. Just try to change your perception. Many will count backwards and many will go 3, 2, 1 and stop because they're bringing themselves outside of the moment. If one is in a situation with someone that is causing effect to them, rather just say, thank you, but I'm going to remove myself now because I do not feel emotionally ready for this conversation. And do not feel bad and remove yourself. It is about taking charge and understanding that you are responsible for you and no one else is.
And then how can one remain in that neutrality of the heart?
It is again to say that the neutrality is not about remaining in there. It is about understanding that it is there by just being. That is it. Be your day to day. Do not try to be a different version of yourself or think, I need to be my higher self in this moment right now. I need to be the best version of myself. Analyze your situation and say, all right, well, I need to get 7 things done. I only have time to do 2 things. I'm going to do them because I'm going to rest afterwards because I deserve that. And be neutral with the way that you work with yourself, and that will change into the way you work with things around you.
Okay, and is there anything else about, activating Christ consciousness within?
It is to say that many's problem is a perceptual shift, is it not?
Yes.
And the best way to activate that is to remove the perception. Forget about what you think you know about Jesus. Forget about it, because that does not matter. Because you do not need to be Jesus. You need to understand that Jesus came here to teach you how to be you. And in a way, yes, we will say He has removed that burden off of you. He has removed those sins. But many have done that as well. Other teachers have come to do different things. Forget about the teachers. Start looking at yourself as your own teacher and start to use that and say, wow, how can I be the best version of me to me? And start changing your perception. Don't walk around and say, what would Jesus do in this situation? He would want you to say, how am I going to handle this situation? And by creating that shift, you take back your power in who you are as a person, and therefore you can move forward. Take back control, take back accountability, and be that person for yourself the way you need to be. And if you cannot be that person and you feel all hope is lost, call upon Him and He will come. Call upon whoever you feel comfortable with and they will come. Again, even if you are in that situation and you feel that you have no control and no hope, you need to turn around, look at yourself in the mirror and look in your eyes and say, I do have control and I can create hope. Because if you cannot give yourself that respect, you cannot truly love yourself in the way that is needed. It is a harsh thing to do, but you can do it because every bad situation that has happened to you in your life, you have survived and you will still continue to survive. You just need to change your perception.
Yeah, that's about reprogramming a belief system, I suppose.
Yes. But again, small things. Just start with the way you handle yourself in that moment. And if you feel things are all chaos and you cannot pay your rent and you don't know how you're going to afford food and you don't know what's going to happen, go and sit with yourself in the mirror, look at yourself and say, I don't like this situation. I don't know what to do. And just allow yourself to sit in that moment. Because in that moment when you are vulnerable with yourself and honest, that is when you will get the answer, because that is what the heart is about. It's about honesty. You cannot get love without being honest. And sometimes honesty is never a nice thing, but it is the right thing. Be truthful and say, I don't know, how am I going to do this? I don't know how am I going to cope right now? And look at yourself. And then you will notice that you might say in your head, no, but we can. Or you might start laughing by the way that you look. Or in that moment you think, okay, I don't know, but I'm going to find out because I deserve that. I didn't come to this planet to pay bills, die, and leave. I came here to learn and create an experience. And because I am conscious enough to look myself in the eye now and know this, I'm conscious enough to take that step to change it. And that is where the difference comes.
Okay. Okay, just about Jesus, is there anything you can say in the language of that time that might not let us, reassure us that this is a direct link to him?
In what way would you like me to say?
Well, I suppose, what was his favorite saying to tell the people?
We will ask him.
Okay.
He says words is not something that can change and alter things, but it is feeling. So he will ask all those to close their eyes now as he is going to project through a light and a feeling.
Okay.
Yeshua, Ewa. Do you feel the warmth?
Yes, definitely around the heart, but also just a calmness.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He says that everyone now who is feeling that warmness and that love, to close your eyes and ask something within yourself that you want, and he will help guide you the best that he can. And this is not something to share with others around you, but something truly that you have been struggling with now the last couple of days, a question that you want answered. Ask and you shall receive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And what did that Heshue Hewa mean?
It was him saying, in love and light.
Mm-hmm. And what language is that?
As we could say, not a language as one would say like Hebrew and all of those, but the language of the heart.
Okay.
When you feel it and you hear it, you will understand it.
Okay. So it's kind of like a light language.
Yes, but not a specific one that you are thinking of. It is more of, yes, we can say a light language, more that some would say in tongues. It is a type of a language.
Okay, speaking in tongues. Okay. Okay, is there any last messages? Anything else any words of, encouragement that Jesus would like people to know about today?
The love is so overwhelming just to feel him here in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying that it is almost as if he's giving a cheeky smile and he's laughing and he's saying it is not that bad. It is going to be okay. He's very humorous as well, as many do not know that. But he wants to say something that he did not want them to feel offended. But he would say, life's not all that bad. At least you were not the one that had to carry the burden.
Literally, yes.
He did it, and he's happy to do it again because he comprehends and knows that love, because he can feel it. And he's sending it to everyone today because you need to feel it. You need to feel it and stop trying to place words on it, and stop trying to find a way that it has to fit in with what the world says today or what others say, but stop it. Just embody it.
Just stop it.
Yes, just embody it. Be the light. Be the light you came to be. Be the connection of love that you've always been. Stop trying to fit into frequencies and patterns that do not serve you, and stop fighting over what should be, and just be that version of love that you know to be true, because it is you. And he's always there, hovering in the frequency, waiting for the call.
Yes. Okay, so anything else? Any last messages from Jesus today?
No more messages, but another frequency will be sent out. Frequency, many of those who are sitting right now, there are some who are quite emotional and feel very hurt in their lives. And he's sending a light to them now, heating up their bodies and reminding them of where they should go. You are not alone, and you never will be. Love and light, I will see you all. Thank you.
Thank you.